everyone's joining us now. And as I was just telling Michael Wolff, who's joining us this evening, about his remarkable Substack debut over the last few weeks. He's just been here for 2 weeks, Michael, and you've made quite an introduction to everybody on Substack. It's a great community. I'm sure they welcome you.
Well, no, it really has been incredible. I'm in awe, actually.
Just and you've been a number one right away. I think you launched at number one, which is an incredible feat. You know, it's becoming so big now, Substack. There's so many popular authors on it and so many independent voices that it's a lot harder these days to make yourself noticed. And not only did you make yourself noticed, you arrived in a rather spectacular way. And I'll just wait for everyone to come in here and join us this evening before I do the proper introduction. But you know, it is notable that you launched with kind of an event that became news, which is this lawsuit around Melania Trump, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. We're also going to talk about the relationship between Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump. You've had some audio recordings around of Jeffrey Epstein and of Donald Trump, some of which are remarkable in describing Trump as a personality, as a friend, I guess, even though he describes him as the worst person alive or something like that. And so we'll explore all these interactions. And where I'm really interested in is seeing where, you know, your view of this whole network is, this network of Trump and Epstein, and which seems to be these days has gone from being just about friendship to maybe human trafficking, maybe underage women. And now there's also the financial crimes aspect, which just continues to fascinate us all. And we're finding out new information about that. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here today. I'm delighted to have author and journalist Michael Wolff with us. He's the famed author of so many great books, so many of which you know because of their great titles. But he's also known for his insider accounts of Donald Trump's world. Now, as I just mentioned, when you launched your Substack just a few weeks ago, it came with a lot of news. It came with a lot of news around Melania Trump. So let me say hi and how are you first? And then maybe you can tell us what's going on with that big lawsuit.
Hi, and thank you for having me. And I'm delighted to be here. So the lawsuit, and it's now it feels like it has occupied my entire life, but is in fact just 2 weeks old. So 2 weeks ago, yesterday, and several days before that, we had heard I got a letter from Melania Trump's lawyer that said they were going to sue me for $1 billion for statements I had made, things that I had learned, and then statements I had made about the relationship of Jeffrey Epstein, Melania Trump, and Donald Trump. And there was they have threatened or sued a variety of people, including James Carville, including the Daily Beast, other people, for this kind of thing. And this thing is, I'm loath to even say what their objection is, other than they don't want people to say that Melania Trump knew Jeffrey Epstein, which we've seen in various photographs.
It's very hard to deny. Evidence. I mean, that's in every photograph. Many photographs, even one with Prince Andrew, even one with them and Mar-a-Lago together. There's so many, actually.
I know. It's extraordinary. So, I mean, the point is they just are using the law and their ability to bring and to fund lawsuits to discourage people from talking about this. I don't think that there's any pretense on their part that they could ever win any of these lawsuits. I don't think that's the point. I think that the point is if we file a lawsuit against you or anyone, that's going to cause you so many problems. Yes, distress. I mean, I think one person put it to me, so much brain damage that people relent. They say, okay, fine, I'll just walk away from this. So anyway, they I got this letter, and I just didn't think that there was any way I could walk away from it. I certainly wasn't going to say that this was not true, recant it, apologize for it, no less pay them $1 billion. Um, and so I with my lawyers, we talked about this, and I said, okay, well then they'll sue me, and we'll see what happens. And then it was my lawyers who said, well, why don't we sue them first?
Mm.
They're threatening this. They've said they're going to sue you. They have taken bona fide action to shut you up. In New York State, there is something called there's a set of anti-SLAPP laws, and a SLAPP lawsuit is exactly that. And I forget what it stands for, but it's to discourage public comment. So in New York State, that's illegal. If you use this, if you file suits, which you're not going to win, for the express purpose of silencing somebody, that's not allowed. That's against the law.
It's the joy of New York, isn't it? That you're allowed to say what you need, what you want to say.
Yeah, exactly. So that we went into court 2 weeks ago yesterday, and filed this lawsuit. Now, the other aspect of this is that it gives me subpoena power. So I have the power to compel Melania Trump and Donald Trump to, under oath, answer questions about, in this instance, Jeffrey Epstein. So all of the unanswered questions, all of the things they do not want to talk about, I have now essentially called their bluff, and I am in a position to force them to talk about these things, to force them to answer questions about their lives in the community of for lack of a better word, the community of models in New York City in the 1990s. Both Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump were obsessed with models, supermodels, runway models, catalog models, girls who just dreamed of being models. Obviously, Melania fits into one or more of those categories. And so that's the discussion. It will be illuminating, to say the least, that I will be able to have with the president and the first lady and anyone else who was in their circle at the time.
So this is just because they threatened you with a lawsuit. It gives you permission to go ahead with a SLAPP legal action against them?
Exactly.
And so you can compel them to basically sit in court or in discovery at least, and ask all these questions that we're all dying to know.
Exactly.
Wow, that is
extraordinary.
remarkable.
I mean, from a journalistic point of view, I mean, I'm always asking people questions that they're either not answering or not answering truthfully. So now I get this incredible power
to go all the way through with this. I mean, you're intending to go all the way through with it because you can now that you have this power.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not sure that there is an alternative. I mean, I guess they could call me up and say, sorry, and we didn't mean this, and
right.
And will you go away? And I'm not even sure I would at that point go away.
Right. Well, why would you, now that you have this opportunity to now subpoena them and ask these questions? You're raising money for this, which is quite laudable, because I'm sure it's expensive to do these.
Yeah, no, and even that. I mean, the support on this has been truly incredible. And just today, I mean, I got my first legal bill the day before yesterday, and I thought, Jesus. I mean, you think you're prepared for a legal bill, and then it comes, and it's by a factor greater than anything you prepared for.
Yeah,
so I started just today, a GoFundMe page, which has been extraordinary. I mean, the support, the outpouring, the willingness of people to help me and to support this this resistance against this White House
It
has
is much
been
bigger. It is much
really.
bigger than just you. I mean, it's offensive. I don't mean to interrupt you there, but if you what they have done to the First Amendment, what they have done to journalists, even at 60 Minutes, at ABC and other places, is chilled everybody's ability to do their work and to tell the truth and to report accurately what's going on in this country. So to have someone like you championing this cause, is so important. And it does take someone like you, someone with incredible credibility and enough of a record to be able to take on someone like Donald Trump. So I really applaud your efforts here, and I hope people go to the GoFundMe page. Do you want to share where they can find it? If there's a URL or a name?
Yeah. I'm again something I'm just learning. I'm just learning about Substack, and I'm just learning about GoFundMe. But I think you could just go on and search for Michael Wolff,
Okay.
and I think find it. But I will be putting this up tomorrow on Substack too. All of this information.
It is remarkable how much interest there is in the Epstein-Trump relationship. I mean, it seems to has dogged him for years, has dogged Trump for years. Epstein's been dead for 6 years, and it still seems to be sort of the ghost that's threatening him in every way. We're just seeing the elections right now as so many Democrats are turning out in a referendum really against Trump. So many people are turning up in a referendum against Trump. It looks like he's going to be receiving some bad news when he wakes up in the morning or later on tonight about how popular he is in the country. And one of the reasons you could say is Jeffrey Epstein. Is this consistent, not only denial, but a complete organized cover-up that's now permeated not only the executive, but also the legislature. The House. It's now put all the country at a bit of a standstill. Um, what
No,
is it about?
it's one of the remarkable things. I mean, I have been writing about Donald Trump almost to the exclusion of everything else for um, hit me 10 years now. And he has gotten away with literally everything, one after another of the things that no one else could get away with. He has just swept by, swept under the rugs. We don't remember those things anymore, except for Epstein. It just clings to him. It won't go away. Even he says, he mutters, people in the White House have told me, Epstein, Epstein, Epstein. And it is that one thing which I can't quite explain, except to think that somehow people understand that Epstein explains so much about Donald Trump, that Epstein is the secret heart of Donald Trump.
It's so interesting. It's almost like a Lady Macbeth moment with our damned spot as he whispers Epstein in the White House.
Yeah.
It is so interesting that it affects him so much too. You watch his constant recitals about it. We want to move away from this. We want to get away from this, and yet he can't seem to. What is it about that relationship that is causing this?
Well, I think the one thing is that it is a real relationship. I mean, this is not just passing, that it represents a major piece of his life, that for more than a decade, these two guys were the best of friends. I actually think that they may be, for each of them, they're the closest relationship they had in life.
Mm.
Involved in every aspect of each other's lives and business, from social life, sexual life, business life. Money, I think we can reduce it to there are two main interests: money and women, money and, dare I
And
say,
power, maybe three.
girls.
Do you you touch on those things, which is so interesting. You talk about them having a social life together, which we've known. We've known that they've had an incredibly close friendship over those 10 years. They were seen out partying a lot. There was the chasing of the models. Then, and we know that there has been an aspect of the human trafficking and the abuse of young girls. But what's interesting as well is this business side that seems to be quite new. We hadn't really encountered their interactions on a business level very much. It hasn't been public record that they've been in business together, except perhaps with the Les Maisons La Amitié, which is what you had in one of your books when you wrote about how Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were both chasing this Wexner home in Palm Beach. And that's what ended their friendship. But before that, there hasn't been that much contact about them in the business world, or has it? Maybe you know that there has been more
Well,
than.
I know some of the details. I know that I mean Epstein was very much involved in Trump's Trump's affairs, certainly to the extent that Trump was in trouble in his affairs. So in the early 1990s, when Trump went bankrupt, one of the things that had happened is that he had personally guaranteed so many of these loans, up to the tune of $1 billion, and so much so that the banks actually forgave him these loans. They weren't going to get them back, and it was just easier, I think, to say, okay. The situation with that, however, means that when the bank forgives you loans, that immediately becomes income. So that became the crisis. I mean, after the crisis of owing money, then you're forgiven money, and that prompts another crisis, which you have to pay taxes on it. If you're forgiven $1 billion in loans, well, then you instantly owe the government $500 million. So if you didn't have the billion, your chances are you weren't going to have the 500 million. And this is the point at which Epstein comes in and figures out the ways to get his friend out of the immediate harm's way of a phenomenal tax bill.
So he was his tax advisor, even maybe not officially his tax advisor, but unofficially he was advising him on tax issues.
Absolutely. I mean, they were, and the truth is, I think that they were involved in there was nothing that each other did that these two guys who were very close, at the same time, very competitive, back and forth. There was a girlfriend that they shared back and forth for a period. Everything they didn't move without, one did not move without the input and approval and advice of the other.
Now that's can be the case with many friendships. However, the very few friendships would have photographs of your friend tucked away in a safe, of your friend in a compromising position with stains on his suit, and you've seen these pictures,
yes.
You more than anybody else.
Well, yes, but I'm not sure that's true. I mean, I think these kinds of pictures were, which any, not my friends, but I think many people might have these kinds of semi-jocular, semi-comic, we're at a party. I don't know whatever the circumstance says. We're around the swimming pool. Yeah. These are not taken in that moment of thinking that you're doing anything wrong, because you are just living your life, a life we have come to understand was problematic, to say the least, in so many ways. But at that moment, not. Just two guys, two playboys, this is what we do, this is who we are. Now, the fact that Epstein saved these pictures, I think that's a more difficult thing to analyze. But even when he took them out, when he showed them to me, it was in a spirit of kind of a mockery of Trump, almost that these were kind of novelty pictures. These were meant to be laughed at.
Right.
And at that moment in their relationship, at this point, if you laughed at Trump, I think Epstein would have been pleased about that.
Take us into that moment, though. So you're interviewing him, or you're meeting up with him, but it's part of an interview, if I'm not mistaken. And then how does he get to show you the pictures in the safe? What leads you up to that?
Yeah, I mean, so the background here is that in 2014, and I had known Epstein slightly before this. Epstein, I worked at New York Magazine. Epstein was part of a group of very rich men who tried to buy the magazine. Then they actually lost it to another even richer man. So I had gotten to know Epstein during that period, and then Epstein went to jail, and I didn't know what happened to him, um, and and only later, after he got out of jail, did he contact me. And then in 2014, we got together, and he wanted me to write about him. He was looking to be rehabilitated. And he said, yeah, I have had this problem, but I've done a lot of interesting things. I know a lot of interesting people. I think, yeah. And I told him I probably am not interested in this, but he said, no, well, don't worry about it. Whatever you want to do. But, a lot of interesting people come to my house, and I'll invite you when I think that there's someone who you might like to hear, or like to meet, and then you'll decide if you want to write about me. And we did this, and he did have interesting people there, and it was weirdly compelling. And I did think, well, this is a strange and perhaps interesting life. But then in 2015, his old friend, Donald Trump, started to run for president. And that was unlikely at that point, continued to be unlikely. But then it rather seemed that it was slowly less unlikely. And I remember Epstein was the first person who said to me, Donald Trump is going to become the president of the United States. And I started to write about Trump at this point. And Epstein became a very helpful source. He was very insightful. I mean, he knew an enormous amount about Trump, was very insightful about Trump the man, was full of kind of shocking anecdotes about Trump's behavior. And that was in the context of this and me talking to him about Trump that he brought out these pictures.
We have some of this audio, which is, if it's okay with you, I can play some of it. This is, where he describes Trump as a horrible human being, but it also describes how he set up friends in these unusual stunts. So let me see if I can get this to play here, and you can talk to us on the other side of this. It's not that long.
So how do you know this? So I need the just give me dump. Scout up. Same mail pattern board that we all have. Again, it's chapter. Stay. I don't know if you might be made that official UFO was just honest. I was so funny. I'm sitting there listening to the flashing postphone. I would say, I think he's a great guy. I love working with him. Still there. Just amazing. He's like, it's like, he said, you like it? He says, what? How often do we? He said, seriously, how often do we? He says, we don't want to. You like to go upstairs, tomorrow, come over. There's a show for you. Someone to us, probably, or why I'm dropping to us. So come over 3 o'clock. We can have a great time. At first, she might have, the system, we can have a great time. We are here at 2 o'clock with the first test. The more time you're returning to us, I thought, this, come on, you must have had a face. The wife, right? But yes, tell me that. And the wife's arm is beautiful, with so slow, so, I know it's lost. I couldn't do very fast. But I know these things with that night, like the end of the world, especially on America, floating to America, this doesn't feel like show.
So what he's doing there is essentially setting up his best friend in order to sleep with his best friend's wife. If I'm getting the context correctly, maybe you can explain it more.
No, it's absolutely Trump, according to Epstein, would have his friend, whoever it was, in the office. He would be asking him personal questions, essentially getting the husband to incriminate himself while he had the wife on the speakerphone. I mean, these are sleazeballs of a rare order, wholly amoral, living a life in which, I think for one thing, in which you would do anything to be able to fuck whoever you wanted to fuck. I mean, I think that was one part of the baseline of this. But it's also a life accepting of a kind of universal depravity.
And that getting one up on your friends really is okay. Is the thing you want to do.
No, I mean, he would say, actually, there's one point in here where he says, Epstein describes him as saying a thing that makes life worth living is sleeping with your friends' wives.
That strikes me as being so bizarre. I mean, that's not what I think of as a friend. It's not what you think of as a friend. And yet here you are, these guys have built a sort of a network, and you see the same situation sort of arise around other people like Leon Black, who was also a source of income.
These are a set of guys who are living outside of the rules, and they're proud of that, and they're doing that by design, and they regard that as the achievement of their life.
And part of living outside of the rules means protecting the other guy if they're caught in situations as well. So they created a network where it was okay amongst the network to break the rules all the time.
Yes, I think that is true.
Good.
I'm trying to think about it, because all of they had complicated relationships, all of these guys between themselves, because obviously they were all very competitive, and they were all making money off of each other, or trying to make money off of each other. So you would not necessarily describe them as a band of brothers. Rather
Right.
something else. It was they needed each other at the moment they needed each other, but would I think happily if they needed something else, they'd throw you under the bus, which is how the Epstein-Trump relationship broke up. In 2004, Epstein believed himself to be the top bidder of a house in Palm Beach. He took his friend Trump with him to give him advice on how to move the swimming pool. And Trump immediately went around his back and bid more and got the house. That was at that moment their breach began.
It's such an interesting story, that breakup, because there's different versions of it. Some people say that Trump, went out of his way behind Epstein's back to bid for that house. Other people say he was supported by Deutsche Bank or a Russian operative or someone from out of the country, used Deutsche Bank to fund him.
I think actually those stories are those are part of the same story, because then Epstein, when this happened, Epstein believed, he understood that Trump did not have the money, the $41 million that he had bid for this house. So therefore, if
So he'd
he
just been
didn't,
bankrupt, actually.
yes,
So he
so
couldn't
if
have had the
he
money.
didn't have this money, where did that money come from? Um, and Epstein's supposition was that it was essentially a money laundering deal. And in fact, the house was sold less than um, 2 years
4 years
later.
later.
No, I think it's less than two,
Okay.
actually.
Okay.
And for double that amount, 95 something
95
like that.
million. Yes, that's right.
So that would be that would certainly be an indication of a money laundering setup.
Yeah.
Epstein believed he knew who he was laundering the money for, a particular Russian oligarch who ultimately bought the house.
So
So
that's Dmitry Rubovlev, who bought the
exactly.
house at the end for 95 million. Are you saying he's also the person who fronted the money for Trump to buy the house initially in 2004?
Yes, so he would have effectively bought it from himself, which is a, 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 a which is a way, a structure for laundering money. But anyway, Epstein confronted Trump about this and said, first, I'm going to sue you, but this is going to come out because you don't have the money, and I know what you did here. And it was at that point that Epstein's legal troubles began, and he believed that it was at Trump's instigation, that Trump is the first one to have gone to the Palm Beach police and dropped a dime, as Epstein would say, on what was going on at Epstein's house, which Trump well knew. And I have seen those
Do you believe that that's the
photographs.
case, that Trump actually was the first person, or was, the record seems to show that it's someone's mother or one of the victim's mother that came forward first, but who knows? It could be.
Yeah, and no, and it was, yes. I mean, that was, there was a series of events, but the thing that Epstein maintained, that the thing that alerted the police to this, and and then perhaps made them look upon this other person who was coming forward with more credibility, was that Trump said, "Hey, there's Epstein there are young girls in and out of Epstein's house on a constant basis."
Years later, I think maybe it was around the same time, actually. Sorry, years earlier, there was apparently a confrontation around Virginia Giuffre, where Trump says he told Epstein that
I believe that that's completely made up. That Trump has made that up in hindsight, and even actually Trump puts that confrontation in about 2000 or 2001, and Trump says that's the reason they broke up. When they were not, they were perfectly. Their friendship continued to 2004. And obviously, there's reasons to doubt whatever Trump says, virtually about anything, but certainly.
Do you believe that Trump was, and I know we don't have that much time, but let me just see if I can keep you here for a few more minutes to ask you these. Did Trump ever get funded via Epstein? We've learned all this new information from Ron Wyden and now also from JP Morgan, as they've released all these suspicious activity reports, that there was so much money flowing through Epstein's accounts at JP Morgan and then at Deutsche Bank, billions of dollars, for someone whose relative wealth wasn't that big. I mean, he only had at that time, at certain times, 300 million, 600 million. Yet there was so much money moving from Russian banks and other
well,
bank
I think
accounts.
That was part of the nature of that money. That, I mean, we know that Epstein died with almost $600 million in assets, which, by the way, is a lot of money when your cost of living is running about $50 million a year. But I think the other aspect of this is that if we know that there are of $600 million of known assets, there's probably that much that we don't know about.
Right. Do you think any of that money, though, was Trump getting money from perhaps the Russians or other people through Epstein? Do you think that was ever a route that Trump got funded that way?
I don't know. And of the many things that Epstein talked to me about, that was not a piece of this. But in as looking back on what Epstein told me, he had the capacity to be both remarkably transparent and straightforward. At the same time, he could be hiding all kinds of things. But would this have been part of the Epstein way of doing business, that everybody was involved in the money circle which he had created? Yeah, I think quite possibly.
When he was arrested in 2019, it was under Trump's Department of Justice. When he died, it was under Trump's Department of Justice. There's a lot of speculation about why he was arrested then, and can you shed some light on what you feel?
Yeah,
I
can say, this was a very unusual arrest. The Justice Department in 2008 had entered into what is called a non-prosecution agreement. They agreed that they would not prosecute Epstein for the crimes that for a description of these crimes, which are the involvement with these women in Palm Beach from, I think, 1999 through 2004. I think those are the dates. They would not prosecute him if he agreed to accept a plea deal with the state of California. So this became a jurisdictional issue. The Fed said, we won't prosecute you if you plead guilty to the state of Florida. Okay, this is not that unusual. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of discussion since about whether this was, he got off easy and why they did this, and that's a reasonable discussion. But what is clear, and what can't be argued, is that they did enter into this non-prosecution agreement. When the federal government enters into a non-prosecution agreement, they keep it. They don't break it. There may never have been an instance in which they did, which they break it, for the obvious reason that no one would enter into such an agreement with them again. So the fact that they did break this in 2019, the fact that they did essentially launch the investigation and the indictment that they said that they pledged they would not, means that something extraordinary happened. So the question is, what was that? Was it as some people believe, some people within Epstein's legal circle, that this was Donald Trump trying to shut up Epstein? And I play a small part here because Epstein had started to talk to me about his relationship with Trump, and on the record. And in my book, my second book about Trump, called Siege, which was published in June 2019, told the story about the House and Trump and the possibility of money laundering there. And weeks later, after this book was published, I think like 3 weeks later, the arrest occurred. But then there is another view inside of the Epstein legal circle, that it was the Southern District who indicted Epstein, who was in fact trying to investigate Trump, and had arrested and indicted Epstein on the possibility that they could squeeze him for information about his old friend, Donald Trump.
And by all accounts, he was talking about that in his last days. I mean, I recall Stephen Hoffenberg telling me in those last few days before the death that Epstein was talking to authorities, that he was in fact sharing a lot of information with them. And those things could also be both true. It could be that the SDNY arrested him, but then, he died because of somebody else's interests. On the day that he died, um, I spoke to Steve Hoffenberg soon after he died, and Steve was terrified that someone was going to kill him as well. And his honest reaction at the time, and I asked him who, he said, "Well, Donald Trump, because if Donald Trump, Donald Trump likely killed Epstein, he'll likely want to kill me." And I was surprised by that reaction, but you know. Do you think that there's even a possibility that without making allegations we can't support, but would he be on the suspect list? Is he a person of interest in the death of Epstein?
I've always been trying to be circumspect about Epstein's death. I don't know the answer. I don't know what happened. I don't even have a theory. I believe that I am the last person Epstein communicated with before he died, that I received a message from him on, he died early on Saturday morning. I got a message from him on Friday evening. This was passed through his lawyers. I had written a note to Epstein, just one of those, hope you're okay. And he responded. His response was still hanging around. Obviously, that's macabre because hours later he would be dead with a sheet around his neck. My feeling is that there is little way he could have killed himself in the way that that he would have had to have killed himself, in the way that it is described that he had killed himself with he would have had to have broken his own neck. And that seems, to say the very least, implausible. But I think equally implausible is the idea that something would have happened without the knowledge or the suspicions even of the half a dozen U.S. attorneys and as many FBI agents who were absolutely focused on Epstein, the most famous inmate in an American jail at that time. Those assistant U.S. attorneys and FBI agents would have had to have kept their mouths shut, and that never happens.
So
I don't know.
You don't know the answer. Do you suspect you do think he was murdered, though? You don't think he committed suicide?
No. I as I say, I don't know. For him to have been murdered, it is impossible that those AUSAs and FBI agents would not have been aware of something remiss. And none of them has ever said anything to suggest that. So therefore, they would have to be keeping silent, which they never do.
I have one more question for you, if I could. Tomorrow morning or tonight, when Trump gets up, you know him quite well. When he finds the news of the election victories that are happening, it seems like at least Virginia has gone to. Is that Virginia that's gone to the Democrats? He'll get a new mayor in New York. He's sensing the tide is turning around his popularity or so-called popularity. What's he likely to do, knowing his history?
I don't think that he does sense that the tide is turning. Remember, Donald Trump lives in his own world. It's a bubble reality. And I mean, I think it's one of the reasons he's been able to keep going for so long. I mean, 4 criminal indictments. Who would have survived that? But Donald Trump did rather handily survive that. Even with a conviction, he survived that, because in his mind, the world is as he wants it to be. And he pushes forward on that basis, and only on that basis. And there's never a recalibration. There's never on his part a sense that never a sense that he was wrong, and never a sense that things are going wrong or that he could have done something different. It is just part of his remarkable talent, and it works for him. He just assumes it will that his will be will be the will be what wins in the end.
The investigation into the original case that got him the prosecution and the non-prosecution agreement, we also found out this weekend, involved the local prosecutor at the time also launching a money laundering investigation against him that landed up being given up as part of this non-prosecution agreement. Do you know if Epstein, sorry, this is about Epstein, I should say. Do you know if Epstein knew that he was being investigated for money laundering, and to what extent that would have played a role in his accepting that plea deal?
I don't know, but I've long since come to understand that there are many things that going on simultaneously in Jeffrey Epstein's life. He was, a kind of, he too, like Donald Trump, it was amazing. It is amazing to me that he could stand up quite jocularly under all of these things, under this complex web of cause and effect that seemed like it could at any time take him down or make him rich.
And yet he seems to have survived quite well up until a certain point, and then he could no longer do that. He could no longer, it's kind of a tale of two friends, one of whom becomes a president and the other one who dies in a jail cell alone. It seems so, it's just so completely opposite the way their lives have emerged. Do you think that's just in Trump's world, that would just be a case of him saying, well, I beat Jeffrey Epstein. I'm top dog, or do you think there's a sense of loss still around Jeffrey Epstein? Do you think there's any sort of fondness or anything around Jeffrey Epstein that would have endeared him to him?
I don't. I would be surprised on that. Trump is a man without an inner life, and I think that this is all part of the very serious game, these life and death game that these guys play.
It really is that. Michael Wolff, I want to thank you so much for being here tonight with me. He's the author of Fire and Fury, Siege, and Landslide, as well as many, many other books. Is there anything that you want to talk about today that you're working on right now, beyond just the incredible body of work that you have? Is there anything else you want to share with anybody?
No, I wish I was. I am trying not to write another Trump book, at least not like the books that I have written before. So I don't know what I will write. Something, but I'm not there yet. But right now I'm just suing the First Lady, and with an eye that might be the ultimate book.
That could be an incredible book, and everyone should support you in your efforts to sue the First Lady and to get these two people into a situation where they have to answer questions around Epstein and others. That would be a remarkable achievement. You have a GoFundMe, which we will share with everybody in the post below, but which you'll also share on your very successful Substack, which you launched with so much fanfare and it did so well. It's called Howl. Tell us a little bit more about the Substack and how people can find it and what to expect from you on your own Substack.
Well, I think at first thing it will be an up to the minute of what's going on with this legal case, but I'm also telling the Epstein story in a kind of methodical, structured way, and at the same time covering my weekly or twice weekly coverage of what goes on in the Trump White House.
That's amazing. Everyone should subscribe to Michael Wolff's Substack. And if you haven't read any of his books or many of his books, you should read them all. They're all fantastic. You can order them on wherever you get your books. And also, please support his GoFundMe. Michael, thank you so much for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. I know all the viewers got a good sense of the story that, maybe they weren't able to see in smaller pieces. So thank you so much for being here tonight.
Great. Fantastic. And let's do it again soon.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much. Michael Wolff, everybody. Thank you for being here. We'll see you again tomorrow at 3.
Great.